Formula One on 5 Live.
Hello, welcome back to a continual sunny Silverstone. A few white clouds in the air. It's round 12 of the Formula One calendar. We are at the halfway point of the season, and it is the British Grand Prix. The grandstands are absolutely packed out. And up in the commentary box, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is F1 journalist Rebecca Clancy. And down on the ground in one of the best pit lanes of the year, it's Jenny Gow.
It is, and as you say, the fans have turned out in their thousands. 500,000 fans are expecting across the weekend, and a lot of them here supporting either Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri in their McLaren, or they are supporting Ferrari and number 44, Lewis Hamilton. That's all you see around the grandstands, all the fans that you chat to in the hotels, coming down to the bar in the lifts. They're loving it, and they're loving this display of Formula One coming to Silverstone, the heartland, the home of British motorsport. And at the moment, yes, the wind is still picked up. It's still going, I think it's a headwind still. No, tailwind, sorry, my apologies. There are some white fluffy clouds in the sky. The sun is shining, and now I am directly in the sun, which I love. I was cold earlier. It was in the shadow. Now, as they do some flowbies on the back of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari, I'm happy.
Good, we're glad to hear it. And Jen, actually, it's a bit of a unique pit lane here, isn't it? Because it sort of goes quite deep in the middle. You've really got to sort of go on your tiptoes to see over at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the further you get towards pit exit, you're actually going down and you can't see the fans. So thank goodness McLaren have had such a turnaround of form, because now they have that place at the front of the grid and at the head of the pit lane. So they're the first garage you come into by the FAA garage, so on the right-hand side. Before, I think about 5 years ago, they were right down the other end, hidden from fans' views and spectators' views, and it was a bit sad. So yes, it's good times for them.
It certainly is. Shows just how far McLaren have come in a short amount of time. I mentioned earlier that up in the commentary box, which overlooks the pit lane, we can see the McLaren pit wall and the packed out grandstands, and just the final corner as they heel round the right-hander of Club. Up in the commentary box is Rebecca Clancy, and joining us now, gracing us with his presence, is the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Good afternoon, Benny.
Hi, Harry. If I was just going to say to Jenny, if I remember rightly, Jenny, I think the pit lane used to be the other way around. So the top teams were at the bit where the grandstands couldn't see, and that was the sort of controversy back in when this pit lane was first made in 2010-ish.
Now, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. I don't often do this, but from my understanding and from my experience in here, the first team, which would now be McLaren, at the time it was Mercedes, were in the middle. And then they split out either way. So the lowest teams were the first garage and the last garage. And the central teams were in the middle, because obviously people came and supported those teams. I
think
people
you're right.
Wanted to, I'm just getting moved on, but people wanted to see them, and so they put them in the middle. But I always felt with the teams right at the end, because it was normally Williams or Haas. It still is Sauber, and they're down there at the end, and Haas. But yeah, I think that's how it went.
Yeah, now you mention it, Jenny, that definitely was the case.
Oh my goodness,
am
I right about something?
But I still think that there was a year or two when the top teams were at the bad end, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, it's a bit of a mess, the pit lane design, let's be honest. But what I will say about this Silverstone circuit is it might be the best racing circuit on the calendar in terms of the quality of racing that it generates. And it's not just because of the layout with the long straights, and then you've got this sort of, after the first pit straight and then Abbey, you've got the sort of slow corners onto the long Wellington straight, so there's an overtaking place there, as well as an overtaking place into Stowe and another one into Vale, sometimes even Copse if you're super brave, as we saw with Hamilton and Verstappen famously or infamously in 2021. But also because there's something about this circuit, and no one's really quite sure what it is. Maybe it's the quality of the asphalt. Maybe it's the fact that the corners are quite balanced between left and right. We know Harry likes to talk about numbers of left and right corners. It doesn't tend to overheat tyres in the way that you would expect it to, given there are so many long, fast, demanding corners. And that enables the drivers to keep pushing harder than you might expect them to during a race day. And I think that helps the racing as well as those track characteristics.
18 corners, 8 to the left, 10 to the right.
There we go.
There it is. Around this just over 5.8 kilometre track, 3.6 miles. I mean, Beck, we spoke a lot when we were in Miami about how that was becoming a big event almost with a Formula One race attached. And this is the home of British motorsport, the home of Formula One, some might say. And this is now becoming more and more like an event with a Formula One race as well.
No, I actually disagree with that. So in Miami, we were discussing, weren't we, that it's almost a big corporate weekend where the teams wine and dine and do what they used to do in Monaco. That's what Monaco was very famous for. That's where the contracts would be signed and the money would be made. And Miami, is very much that event. Silverstone is very much race first. It is track action first, and everything else that goes on around it is supplementary to that. I still think that is the case, because we were saying during FP1, weren't we? These fans that come here are so knowledgeable. Not to discredit the Miami fans at all, but it's still in its infancy, let's say, within the US. F1 is still, even with the 3 races there, it's still trying to break into the US market. It's still trying to attract those fans and all of the money that comes with that. But here, as you say, F1 is very much established. We have Cadillac coming in next season, an American team, but they are going to have a base here, which means as of 2026, 9 of the 11 teams will have a major base in the UK. The first ever race of what we now consider Formula One, which happened in 1950, was here at Silverstone, May 1950. It is the home of Formula One, not just spiritual, but actually logistically, geographically, everything about it. All of the engineers, there is Motorsport Valley here, all of the IP is here. It is the home of Formula One, and you really see that with nearly 500,000 people coming through the gates this weekend. That's amazing.
And now, we've got Sam Fender, Ray, all here performing too.
Yeah, I know who they are.
Well, it's been a long time, 75 years celebrating this year for Formula One. 1950, the first British Grand Prix, won by Giuseppe Farina in the Alfa. The first actual race here, so pre-official Formula One. Do you know what it was called? Do you know the name they had for it, Beck?
No.
The Mutton Grand Prix.
Great name.
Do you know why?
No.
Because sadly a sheep was killed in a racing incident.
Oh.
They named the Mutton Grand Prix after it.
Should they rename Canada the Groundhog Grand Prix?
It's not a bad shout, is it? Not a bad shout. But we've come a long way since then, and as you can hear, there are now cars out onto the circuit. In fact, everybody is out onto the track except for Max Verstappen at the moment. Everybody out there mainly on the medium tyre, with the 2 Haas cars running on the hard tyre. Pirelli bringing actually a step softer than we saw here last year. The C4 running as the soft, the C3 the medium, the C2 the hard, and that's to try and give the teams a little bit more strategic option for Sunday, which we've seen them try to do throughout the last few races. Right, Verstappen still yet to come out of pit lane. Let's head straight down there to Jenny Gow.
Tell you what, it won't be long though, because I've just been moved along, which means the car is now firing up, as you can hear in the background. The yellow medium tyres are fitted on. The jackman, front jackman, releases it. The mechanic one steps out, and that's Max Verstappen gone. The rear wing daubed in high-vis paint, very green, sorry.
Similar to P1, still gusty.
That's just Piastri on the radio, Jenny, being told by Tom Stallard that the wind into turn 1 still gusty, with 55 minutes and 55 seconds remaining of free practice 2, and the track getting busy now with all 20 drivers out on the circuit as Max Verstappen emerges from the pit lane. Lando Norris on his first flying lap at the moment and making his way down the Wellington straight into Brooklands. Then it loops back round through the right-hander of Luffield. Steady on the throttle, run out wide there, and you meet the gravel coming through Woodcote. A slight right-hand kink, then down the National pit straight, the old pit lane, and then flat out in qualifying, and he gets a little bit of traffic from the Sauber and Nico Hülkenberg as he now makes his way through Maggots and Beckett's and out through Chapel. It's a quick series of left, then right, then left, then right again, which spits you out onto the back straight, the hanger straight. DRS, the rear wing flat, flies open for Lando Norris in the papaya and chrome for this weekend livery. Slams slightly on the brakes through the right-hander of Stowe. Then it's a short blast downhill towards the braking zone of turn 16 and 17. Vale, left, then right, then it curves slightly to the right. The rear end of the car, so quickly can it step out on you through club, and that is a lap of the Silverstone track as Norris slots into third with a 1:27.503. Hamilton is actually fastest, the 1:27.280, 2 tenths clear of Leclerc, and it was Lewis Hamilton who was quickest at the end of FP1, so he's got off to a great start.
I know Benny was very excited, wasn't he, earlier, trying to work out the last time that he was top of the leaderboard. But it's good, isn't it? But I was saying in FP1 that there is something between Hamilton and Silverstone. It is an incredibly special track. 9-time winner here, which is an unbelievable record. Nobody thought he would be on the top step last season. Oh, Lawson Radio.
What the? Oh my God, man.
That's Lawson coming through Luffield and finding a car at his outside. A lot of traffic. Wasn't happy with that. And we just also caught a replay of Lando Norris on his quick lap coming through the right hander of Copse and Nico Hülkenberg Sauber right on the inside. And while nothing happened, it was a fairly close call. Something like that in qualifying will be frowned upon by the stewards. So even though we've got such an expansive track here, traffic management, even in FP1 and certainly so far in FP2, proving that it is a hot topic. Now, that was Ollie Behrman with Liam Lawson, by the way, and that has been noted by Race Control. I want to talk, I've got two esteemed journalists alongside me, and while we get up to speed with the lap times...
anyway.
Oh, Benny.
We've got one esteemed journalist and a man who knows his bears. And I want to talk about what's going on with the FIA at the moment and what the latest happenings are, because...
Do we have to? I've been in an FIA world of pain all day.
Oh, but I thought you wanted to talk about this. I thought we wanted... I think we need to see it off.
We do.
I think we needed to see it off. So we've got the president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, is... there is an election to be called before the end of this year. Carlos Sainz Sr. was potentially going to be in the running, but in the last few weeks he has ruled himself out. But I believe, Beck, we have a new candidate coming in. So first of all, who is this and why is this important? Why are we talking about it?
This is incredibly important because the election for the FIA president is in December. Mohammed Ben Sulayem has already said he will be standing for a second term, and before the announcement today, we had no one else really going up against him, so he would have been re-elected, not very particularly democratically because he was the only candidate. As you say, Carlos Sainz Sr. put the idea out there that he was looking into it but has since backed out. And now we have the American Tim Mayer, who has fully launched his campaign for the elections in December. He used to work at the FIA but was fired by Ben Sulayem last November. He got involved with a writer review at COTA, the US track, and Ben Sulayem thought there was a bit of a personal slight against him. Anyway, cost Mayer his job. Mayer this morning, just outside Silverstone, the track, he formally announced that he would be standing. He did not hold back as to his reasons why. It was a stinging attack on Ben Sulayem. He said that Ben Sulayem had overseen a reign of terror and it was a failure of leadership. He went on to say, just bear with me, I'm pulling up the quotes. He went on to say that we have witnessed wave after wave of statute amendments ushering in the greatest centralisation of power in the FIA's history. He just didn't hold back. The FIA, we believe, are going to respond, but they have not yet. Tim Mayer, I can tell you, having just come from the paddock, is walking around with a man emboldened with all of the power of a potential election. Well, there will be an election coming up. He actually, and I thought this was bold, standing on the step of the FIA hospitality outside chatting to people, which I actually thought was quite amusing. No one came out to move him along, so fair enough if that's where he wants to stand. But it's really important because Ben Sulayem has come under a huge amount of criticism comments he's made about women, the unnecessary fights that he has picked with the drivers over swearing and jewellery. And there is a feeling that if someone stood against him, that it was needed, really, because when Ben Sulayem came in, there was a lot of hope. He said all the right things. That's why he got elected. And just to explain that it's the member clubs who vote for the president. And Ben Sulayem actually still has the support of those, but as one of the many stories that Andrew Benson has broken on the FIA in recent weeks and months, which is why he's feeling the hot water, as he smirks next to me, and as Tim Mayer talked about, this centralisation of power and the people that he's got rid of, and people aren't really too fond of how he's running the organisation now. Some people have used the word dictatorship. They've gone that far. And there is a sort of almost a loss of confidence in him externally. And that's what's key here, is we're talking about externally, because all the voting is done internally by those members. The drivers, George Russell, who is the director of the GDPA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, he has been very outspoken about Ben Sulayem, saying that, they wrote an open letter, particularly about the swearing, saying treat us like adults, and they've done nothing about it. And then Ben Sulayem put out a statement saying, you find we're going to reduce any of the penalties. And George Russell turned around and said, okay, well, that's talk. We'll wait to see what they actually do with action. So it is a huge story, despite what Benny wants to talk about it or not. Go on, Benson, what do you want to say about it?
I mean, I think you've summed it up really well, Beck. And, here's some radio to save me.
This is the most unnecessary I've had in high speed in a while. Probably the most unnecessary I've had ever.
Ollie Bearman with some understeer issues then.
Yeah, so, on Ben Sulayem, basically it's accurate to say that there is widespread dismay and disquiet about the way he's conducted himself as FIA president on a whole raft of different issues. The FIA, when they give responses to criticisms against them, they talk about strengthening governance, but all their critics would say that there might be strengthening governance, but it's how they're strengthening it and in what way. So, for example, they're basically concentrating power, all the statute changes that have been made since Ben Sulayem came to power, concentrating power in his hands effectively, taking it away, moving the FIA away, I should say, from sort of democratic standards and norms and normal and standard and usual practices of good governance. They don't like the fact that people are saying this about them, but that's what people are saying about them. And I think when you read the statutes, as Beck says, I've reported on this extensively for the last two and a half years, whatever it is. It's very clear what this, it's all legalese language, but you can read it and understand why it's problematic. And it's not just those sorts of allegations. It's things like sacking Tim Mayer because he led a right of review on behalf of the US Grand Prix organisers last year, and the issue that was supposedly that Mayer said upset Ben Sulayem was in a presentation he made on behalf of COTA, was that a motorcade of the president of the FIA was part of the sort of influencing factors around the crowd invasion that led that they were fined for and that they appealed against. He was accused by a whistleblower of interfering in 2 races. He was acquitted of that charge by the FIA, but it's like marking your own homework. The critics would say. He's being sued by Susie Wolff, the wife of Toto Wolff and the director of the F1 Academy, for what many people regard as a spurious conflict of interest inquiry that was launched and then closed down within the space of 2 days at the end of 2023, one of the most bizarre episodes in FIA history. That lawsuit is still going on. He's fired Natalie Robin, he trumpeted as the first female chief executive officer of the FIA. Why did he fire her? Because she was starting to raise questions about the finances of the president's office. Not only did he fire her, but he also fired the head of the finance committee of the FIA, a man called Bertrand Badre. Who was he? A former head of the World Bank, of all things. Who else did he fire? An audit committee member, Tom Purvis, a former head of BMW UK. These are all highly competent, highly respected people who've all been fired because they did things that Ben Sulayem didn't like. This is why there's so much concern about the way the FIA is being run. And this is what Tim Mayer was very eloquently and highly critical of this morning.
Well, look, there is definitely a sea of discontent up and down the paddock as to the goings-on over the last couple of years, but we will keep you abreast of all the latest happenings with the election bid. Stay tuned to the BBC Sport website for that one. But back to the on-track action. It's 45 minutes and 2.10 seconds remaining. It's Lewis Hamilton fastest, so just come out on an outlap. Then it's Hadjar, Russell, the top 3, Piastri, Leclerc, the top 5, Antonelli, Norris, Verstappen, Sainz, Lawson, the top 10, with Colapinto, Albon, Alonso, Stroll and Bortoletto in 15th, Peter Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Behrman, Gasly and Ocon.
See the front tires in the high speed. Spun.
I will boxes like that.
Max Verstappen not happy with the way his front tyres are behaving in the high-speed corners. While he comes into the pits, that is where we can once again rejoin Jenny Gow outside Mercedes.
Yeah, thank you. And both Mercedes have just come back into the garage. Kimi Antonelli just in front of me. On the other side of the garage is George Russell. And they're going to work on taking those tyres off and having a look at the cars and how they're handling. And actually at the back of the garage at the moment, Toto Wolff's there as ever. But Valtteri Bottas, the reserve driver, is also there, and have been some whispers about the possibility of Bottas having a driver Alpine this year, taking over from Colapinto, who took over from Jack Doohan. Neither of them really performing as much as I think Alpine would like. And yes, whether that happens or not, who knows? Lots of theories going on about Valtteri Bottas, but he's at the back of the garage at the moment. He was just sitting on a little desk at the back, and actually Denise Lewis also there at the back, just watching on and seeing how these elite athletes in this team operate, and a nice name to have at the race.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Just by the way, Carlos Sainz just had a bit of a spin coming through, I think it was Luffield, coming out the exit of Luffield. We're just going to get another look at it as well. Through Brooklands into Luffield, the right-hander, turning it in on the throttle, gets away from him, almost goes into the back of the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton, and then comes to a stop, sliding it out like his father would do on a rally course, locks up all four wheels. Lewis Hamilton, I think, was watching it in his mirrors because he nearly drove into the old pit lane, and Carlos Sainz gets himself back around, and he's actually been noted for rejoining unsafely. He got a little bit in the way of Nico Hulkenberg, who was the next car coming. Hulkenberg having to decide whether he was going to go right or left. In the end, he had to go left, as Sainz had already made the decision for him. But the Spaniard in the Williams has made his way back to the pit lane now, with a rather worn set of tyres, I think, for the Williams driver, who, of course, achieved his first career win here back in 2022. Might not get that same opportunity on Sunday, but he'll be hoping for some improved performances after having had 6 points finishes so far, but he's been knocked out of Q1 the last 3 consecutive times for Carlos Sainz. Beck, I just want to pick up on what Jenny was saying about Alpine. There are some rumours of Valtteri Bottas all of a sudden, with Franco Colapinto not quite delivering as Flavio Briatore would want. I walked into Alpine in the gap between FP1 and FP2 for a coffee. Well, here's Sainz first.
Could you check if it was a wind gust or if it was dirtier?
We're thinking 2080-ish gust, as you on the curb, 2080-ish gust.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so Sainz wondering what was causing him to go into a spin. The wind here does pick up, can get very gusty, and it can change direction in an instant. I walked into the Alpine motorhome and saw a very lonely-looking Jack Doohan just sat in the corner on his own. And I felt I don't have sympathy too much for drivers, but I felt a little bit for him there. I mean, what do Alpine do at the moment? Because the car in general doesn't seem to be performing well either. Pierre Gasly isn't exactly rocketing up into the top 10 each and every week. They've still got an ongoing managerial circus. In fact, I believe coming into this weekend, it's been announced Steve Nielsen is joining them in September as managing director to deal with the day-to-day running of the team. They've still got to have Dave Greenwood as a team representative for administrative purposes. And then, of course, they've got Flavio Briatore I'm going to say, pulling the strings in the background and actually doing the dealings. But it all just seems a little bit complicated, and at the end of the day, they're last in the Constructors.
Last by a long way as well, aren't they? Just 11 points on the board, quite considerably behind Sauber on 26 points. You do feel for Jack Doohan, and I'm with you, I don't really feel sorry for him very often. He was hardly given a shot before he was replaced in that car by Colapinto, who everybody was raving about. The Argentinian driver would be amazing, stunning, he would shock absolutely everybody. He was given 5 or 6 races, and now he's very much on a race-by-race contract, and that is where these Bottas rumours have started circling, because he isn't performing still, and Alpine quite desperately needs some points on the board. And I can tell you, Bottas is in a fantastic mood this weekend, because I was in the Mercedes motorhome on yesterday for Antonelli's media session, and I was just ended up, as you do, I was stood at the back talking to their PR guy, and Bottas came over and he said, I want to ask a question. What question can I ask? So we were just chatting with Bottas for a bit, and he went and he asked Antonelli a question, and the question was, how important is the number 3 driver? And I thought, isn't that interesting? There you go. So he's in a great mood. He was being very playful, loving life. Still got that hair, whatever you think of that style, the mullet
and the moustache.
All of it still going on. But he was on fine form. He's a very, very nice guy. Good driver, solid driver. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about Hulkenberg at Sauber, that experience that they need. Bottas is exactly the same. He was the consummate wingman at Mercedes, which I'm using the word of Toto Wolff, the team principal, who said it at the time, despite Bottas really not liking that expression. But he was a brilliant driver. He was exactly what you need, as in, he obviously wouldn't be going to Alpine as the number 2 driver, he'd be there as the number 1 driver, but he is the sort of person who can pick up and take advantage of an opportunity when it presents itself. And even when it doesn't, he can get himself stuck in and, you know, start moving them up the field. He's also very well known for the feedback that he can give about the cars and developing it as well. And there's a really interesting choice for him there.
This could be a big opportunity for Valtteri Bottas if there is an Alpine opportunity there, because up until now, I spoke to him not long ago, I think in Miami, and you can actually listen to that interview on the Checkered Flag feed on BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcasts. It was a really good interview. He's fairly realistic about his future. He knows at that stage his only opportunity realistically was the Cadillac seat, and we think that they're not exactly going to be the most competitive outfit in their first year. So now, if he's got a little sniff at an Alpine, which, okay, yes, they're last at the moment, however, they're a hugely experienced team, and they're going to have a Mercedes power unit in the back of their car next year. Surely, if you're Valtteri Bottas, despite having just put up a Cadillac Instagram video, you are doing everything you can to put yourself front and centre of Flavio Briatore.
Yeah, you want that Alpine. I completely agree with you. The Alpine drive over the Cadillac drive. And the Cadillac drive is interesting, isn't it? Because they haven't announced their drivers yet. Not that you would have expected them to. Graham Loudon is very much the team principal there. He's very much doing the rounds and doing all the media and whatever he needs to do. Sergio Perez is obviously very heavily linked with that seat. In the absence of an American driver, they're kind of going as close to home as they can, looking at Perez, who's Mexican, obviously. I can't see Bottas and Cadillac being a good fit at all.
Really?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, the American way of doing business and just knowing Valtteri Bottas for quite a long time. I mean, Alpine is the same, I suppose. It's just, he's quite a serious driver. Like, as much as he jokes around and he plays and whatever, he is a very serious race driver. Obviously, Cadillac are coming in with all the intentions of being at the front of the grid, as Renault did when they came back and then rebranded as Alpine to confuse us all. But you'd go with Alpine just purely because I think they're more established. They've brought Steve Nielsen, which was a great hire. I don't really understand calling him managing director over team principal, because I think effectively he is a team principal. And actually, Christian Horner was talking about this earlier in his press conference, that there are lots of people are called team principals, but they don't all do the same job. Anyway, semantics. Alpine looks like it's in a bad place at the moment, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. We obviously had Ollie Oakes left as team principal. He was in Miami, and then suddenly a day or so later, he was gone. Some issues with his brother as well, which were well reported at the time. So there has been quite a lot of disruption at Alpine. that obviously feeds down to the team. It's impossible for it not to. It affects everyone. It affects the culture. It affects the attitudes. And I think that will turn a corner. I think as Jonathan Wheatley has gone into Sauber, we're starting to see the effect that he's had on the team for the positive. Steve Nielsen is incredibly well respected. He definitely knows what he's doing. He's been in the sport an incredibly long time. He's obviously worked at Renault before during the glory years of 2005 and 6. So I think if you're picking, you'd be going for Alpine right now.
They've also just brought in a new head of aero to report to David Sanchez as Alpine. So they are continuing to restructure and try and find a way forward. But I think, coming back to the drivers, if you are Valtteri Bottas, the optics as well with the Mercedes power unit in the back of that for next year. There are rumours that Mercedes are looking the strongest when it comes to those new engines in the regulation that we will see. That could be the place to be. And right now, Alpine, I think, genuinely have a bit of an engine deficit of about 0.2 of a second down a straight. So you're coming up to a race, but you're one hand tied behind your back almost, more often than not, when you are Alpine. Where are they at the moment? Pierre Gasly is down in 19th. Franco Colapinto showing a little better, actually. He's up in 12th. Approaching halfway through this session, though, 34 minutes and 16 seconds remain. It's the two Mercedes who have now bolted on the soft tyres and have gone fastest. Antonelli a 10th clear of George Russell. So we are now starting to see some of the soft tyres come out to play. The two Racing Bulls out there as well. Let's head back down to pit lane. Jenny Gow outside Mercedes. No, Red Bull.
I have made my way to Red Bull. That was Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari just going out on to the soft tyres onto the track. They're just taping up the front suspension at Red Bull on Max's side of the car. So a little bit of work. Is obviously not quite happy with the feeling of it. A lot of people out there, I've been having a look at some of the comments from fans who were dotted around the circuit. They're saying the car looks twitchy, it doesn't look comfortable for Max. It's really nice to actually hear from everyone who's out there today. So if you're listening to us, you're having a good time, hello. But yeah, Max not happy with that car and the way it's reacting underneath him. So we'll get ready to go back out in a minute.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, if you are managing to listen to us, I know the data and the signal at Silverstone when everybody is here can get a little bit frustrating, but if you are in the grandstands or general admission wandering around, do let us know. Hashtag BBCF1. We would love to hear from you. Any questions as well you've got for the journalist and the bear expert alongside me too, we can absolutely try and get those answered over the course of the next half an hour or so that we have remaining of this free practice 2 session. We'll also in the closing stages get an idea of how the long run pace stacks up as well. We're about to see some more soft lap runs being done. Russell and Antonelli are currently top. Antonelli ahead of George, then Hadjar has popped himself up into third. Tell you what, Racing Bulls are looking fairly quick so far this weekend, still early stages, but they're off the back of a good race for Liam Lawson in particular. Beck, having finished in 6th place, sort of finally answering back to a lot of the pressure that's been placed on him since really the start of the season. It's been probably Lawson's toughest year of his career so far.
Another driver I actually do feel sorry for as well.
Really?
Yeah, I do a little bit. I mean, you get put in the impossible position of being the number 2 driver at the top team at Red Bull, and it is an almost impossible task. Yuki Tsunoda obviously took over and he's not exactly been performing great. Liam Lawson, without the what's the expression, monkey on your back?
Yep.
The pressure, he's actually been doing pretty well. I don't think it was even just the last race. I think the pressure valve has been released and he's been performing. That was Hulkenberg Radio.
Feels very gusty in general. Guys being tossed around a lot.
Yeah, copy that.
Hulkenberg with more wind chat. I mean, look at Lawson's qualifying. Nothing really to write home about until Monaco, where he got his first top 10 starts. Qualified 9th, 13th in Spain, and then managed to go I'm looking at the wrong one. Liam Lawson. Then 6th in Austria. And then, in terms of race results, again, nothing to write home about until 8th place in Monaco. And then just missed out on the points in Spain. I think maybe got a little bit done over by the safety car that we had there for Kimi Antonelli. Retired in Canada and then got that 6th place last time out. I mean, look, we know Red Bull's so cutthroat, and he looked all at sea when he was at Red Bull for the first couple of races, but we now almost put to one side the calibre of driver that's in that car for the time being. We know how difficult it is to drive. When was the last solid, good performing number 2 driver at Red Bull?
Daniel Ricciardo.
I was going to say Daniel Ricciardo in 2014 when he beat... No, hang on, it would be 2014 when he beat Sebastian Vettel. That was the season. And then Vettel left at the end of it. Are my dates right, Benny?
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Over a decade ago.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, Sergio Perez gave it a good go in his first season.
He did.
Minister of Defence.
I'm going to take a lesson out of Benny's Ruthlessness book and say I always thought Perez was slightly overhyped. I think he's
100%.
Okay, good. He's a midfield driver for me. He was never a top team driver. I think the expectation that was put on him was slightly unrealistic because I didn't feel like he could ever really match it.
Was there a better option for Red Bull at the time? They were going to get rid of Alex Albon. Was there a better option? Was Nico Hülkenberg a better option? Was keeping Alex Albon a better option?
They over-promoted Alex Albon. They shot themselves in the foot with that one.
Guys, there's something wrong with the front left. There's really something wrong.
You mean in
we need to solve that by... Yeah, in general, we need to solve that by tomorrow. There's so much lap time in it. Front left is like killing my speed.
Charles Leclerc on the radio, they're not happy with his front left, although he is fastest out on track at the moment. A 1:26.202 on the soft tyre, 0.08 of a second between him and Oscar Piastri now, but Lando Norris is on a quick lap. Fastest of anybody so far in the first sector. Yeah, you do wonder if they'd just given Albon... Because I spoke to Alex a couple of days ago for a different thing that we were doing for the BBC later on in the year. And I think sometimes people forget that he actually did do a few races for Toro Rosso. Because it all happened so quickly.
It all happened really quickly. And the thing with Alex Albon is that everyone's known he's been very good for a very long time. Back in the... Well, I'm really going back here now, the go-karting days. He was taking the fight to Verstappen and winning. Now, he is a very, very good driver who deserves the drive that he's got in Formula One. But the second Red Bull promoted him, my first thought at the time was this is being over-promoted. And, sorry, Benny didn't turn his microphone off for anyone who's just had headphones in and maybe been slightly deafened by him. But luckily you didn't have to listen to him moaning about getting ill all week. He wants to come back at me. But Albon is a fantastic driver. He got over-promoted at Red Bull and he paid the price for that. And actually, to be honest, I think Red Bull paid the price for that because we can see how successful Albon has been at Williams, a team which nurtured him, grew with him, has allowed him to develop. They have got back from Albon what they put into him. So, there's Ray. I know what she looks like. God, I'm really showing my age, aren't I? She's just come up on the screens in front of us. But he's brilliant. I really do rate Albon, and I think he would have been a good choice for Red Bull further down the line. Obviously, there was chatter about Carlos Sainz, who's was part of the Red Bull stable. He's also being linked again with Red Bull with all the chatter of Verstappen going to Mercedes to replace Russell. So no, maybe they didn't have much of an option at the time, but they gave him a much longer run at that seat than they probably should have done.
You say for Sergio Perez that he's a midfield driver for you. Does that mean he is the perfect man for a Cadillac seat?
I don't know what you're saying about Cadillac there.
Well, they're not going to be front runners, are they?
They're not going to be front runners. Look, he has loads of experience. What you want when you're a new team coming in is you need experience because 96%, and the numbers are absolutely made up, but a large majority of the development of the car comes from computers and the engineers and the design of it all. But a very important percentage comes from the feedback that the drivers give, because I always remember Lewis Hamilton saying to me fairly on in my F1 career about how they feel things it just doesn't even show up in the data, and without that the engineers then look at it again and they say, oh my goodness, we couldn't even see that until you mentioned it to us. That is so important. And so Cadillac do want an experienced driver. So yes, in that regard, Perez would be good because he is also one of those drivers who's known for being very good in debriefs, which is exactly what you want. You want them to be outspoken. You don't just want a young driver who comes in and says yes to everything. You need people who push back. It's not exactly aspirational, let's say. But then I don't know who else they'd get. Like,
Yeah.
Their
I love
options
this
are
game.
so limited. Benny?
They're going to be at the back. At least they say they're going to be at the back.
At least they're managing expectations.
Doesn't really matter who they get, does it? But yeah.
Well, no, come on.
But it
You're,
does
you're,
matter.
you're
It
brutal
does.
about drivers. Who realistically you want experience. Surely, if you are Graham Loudon in Cadillac, you want somebody who has been at least in one seat, who has been in Formula One for long enough that they know how it operates. They know the little mistakes that teams can make that you can very quickly iron out. I think Graham Loudon said recently, because didn't he invite a lot of journalists recently to Cadillac? Didn't he say,
including me?
And you were there, so maybe I'll probably paraphrase it. So you can correct me, Betty. But he said something that if we are not last, then another team has got something completely wrong. So they know where they're going to be, at least in that first year.
Well, they don't want to be last.
No, but they're
hoping
realistic.
They won't be, but they're trying to say to everybody who Beck says, they're managing expectations. The whole day was a day. It was an exercise in managing expectations. It was transparent. But look, they need experienced drivers, but at the same time, they need quick drivers. The problem is they don't have that much choice, right? Most of the best drivers in the world are already contracted. And they're picking, they've got slim pickings effectively. So Bottas, Perez, Joe, these are the names that are being bandied around. Joe's managed by Graham Loudon, so I don't know whether that's going to influence the decision or not. Those are the sorts of calibre. Can I just say, by the way, that we've had some soft tyre laps take place while we've been chatting about Cadillac next year. Norris is quickest from the two Ferraris, who continue to look fast, but the person that really stands out is Max Verstappen. He is 9th and he's 7/10 off the pace, and that's with a new floor on the Red Bull, and he's been complaining about understeer, we heard on the radio earlier. It's only Friday, blah blah blah, but that's a long way off the pace.
Sandwiched in between the two racing bulls.
He was unhappy in FP1, wasn't he, where he was half a second off, and he's been very unhappy in this one, so it's not a great start to the weekend.
But Max Verstappen often finds a way over the course of a weekend to bring it back, but Lando Norris' lap time 0.2 clear of Charles Leclerc at the top, then Hamilton behind, Piastri and Antonelli the top 5, Stroll's up there in 6th, and now both Aston Martins are running a new upgrade. They were doing a back-to-back at FP1, so Stroll didn't have their new upgrade, which for Aston Martin they brought a few bits to the floor and an engine cover, so now he's got those on board. He's ahead of Russell. Then comes Hadjar, then it's Verstappen, who's on an outlap now. That's the sound you can hear. Lawson's the top 10, then comes Albon, Alonso, Bortoleto, Ocon, Tsunoda's down in 15th, Sainz behind him, then comes Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Behrman and Gasly 20th and last. Reese on hashtag BBCF1 has said, which bear would be fastest in a Sauber? Don't say Nico Hulkenberg.
I didn't. You did. You can.
That's what Reese said.
You can. Oh, there you go. Nico Hulkenberg.
Just giving the people what they want.
Okay. Is that what they want, Harry?
It's coming back to our bear chat at FP1. If you
You're going to have to explain it. This is the third time you've mentioned bears without explanation.
Not in this session. It was the first time I've mentioned bears in this session.
You introduced him as the bear expert earlier, Benny.
Oh, did I not explain that? Oh, apologies. Well, we were talking about bears off the back of Ollie Behrman and our interview in the Check the Flag podcast, so you can check that out in the preview show. Jenny Gow, save us.
Okay, I'll try. Kimi Antonelli, just to remind you, he's 5th fastest at the moment, 0.5 seconds off leader Norris. He has a 3-place grid penalty for shunting into the back of Max Verstappen last time out in Austria. So wherever he qualifies, he'll move back 3 spaces.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Very good point to remember about that for Kimi Antonelli. Rookie mistake in Austria. Hard lap 1 racing incident. Taking out Max Verstappen, sound you can hear right now, making his way through Luffield, the right-hander. This is the kind of thing, I suppose, Mercedes, a top team, when you take on board a rookie that you open yourself up to, them having these Turn 1 crashes. He's had a bit of reliability as well. A few Mercedes-powered cars actually have had a bit of reliability problems in the last few races. Aston Martin in Monaco, Williams in particular, have had a couple of run-ins with power unit issues. Mercedes not worried about that. It's been different issues every time, but still certainly trying to get to the bottom of it. But Antonelli will try and regain a bit of confidence, riding high off the back of Canada, then the crash in Austria, it certainly feels like it's a rookie season for Kimi Antonelli.
Probably because it is.
Well, no, but we talk about Lewis Hamilton in his rookie year, and now he was lighting up the time issues. You just saw it.
You cannot
instantly.
compare anybody to Lewis Hamilton's rookie season. That was utterly incredible.
But
blew
the
everybody
way
away.
Kimi Antonelli
and
was built, there was high expectations set.
Yeah, I know. I completely understand that. But Lewis Hamilton is a generational talent. That's the difference. And are we saying that about Antonelli? I'm not sure many people were saying that they would put him in the same league as Lewis Hamilton. Even though, if you wanted to say he took his seat, but obviously that was Hamilton's decision. He's been okay. He's been kind of ticking along. It's been a bit of a roller coaster to start with. You can't really expect too much from a rookie driver when you put them in. I think Mercedes have taken a much better approach to Antonelli than perhaps Red Bull do with their younger drivers. You know, he was wrapped in cotton wool and then some bubble wrap and then some more cotton wool. We weren't even allowed to speak to him before fairly near the end of last year. They've done all the right things by him, and he's been very protected, which I actually do agree with. He's only 18 years old. Give him time. The podium in Canada was great.
It was good. I thought he was being billed. Oh, look, he's very good. I don't want to take that away from him. Just to play devil's advocate here, when you're billed as the next or Mercedes answer to them missing out on Max Verstappen,
yeah,
you're expecting headline times.
But the car isn't there. It's not even like George Russell is. George Russell is having a very, very good season. That is undeniable. He has won a race. But he's not really, blown open the headlines and made us all think this is incredible. He's just been consistently sort of ticking almost under the radar.
Well, no, but I'd say
but
the
it's not
headlines
like the car has
we're
been incredible.
underestimating George Russell here.
Or is George Russell... Well, I would probably agree with you. I'm probably making the same point in a different way, that he's outperforming that car. Antonelli, who's in his rookie season, doesn't really know. The thing that drivers always say is the step up from F2 to F1, it's not one step. It's about 300 ladders. It's enormous. It's absolutely huge, because you're not only changing series going up to the pinnacle of motorsport, you're doing it in front of nearly 500,000 people. So, the pressure that comes with that, and then the TV audiences and us in the media talking about you constantly, it's a different ball game. I think Antonelli will get there. I think he's incredibly young. I think he just needs to be given a bit of time, and I think Mercedes will do that.
I think what's interesting about Antonelli is that Harry's right. He was billed as a potentially generational talent. You hear stories about a test here at Silverstone in the wet a winter ago, not the one that's just been, but the one before that, first time in an F3 car, where he was 4 seconds a lap faster than other drivers, and the other drivers weren't idiots by any stretch of the imagination. He'd never been to Silverstone before, never driven an F3 car before. Those are the sorts of things that make people think this could be the next Hamilton, Alonso, Verstappen, whatever. And yes, he's only 18, and yes, his teammate is of an exceptionally high caliber, but so far there haven't been really very many, if any, apart from maybe the Miami sprint pole, haven't been any moments that made you go wow. And normally when you've got a person who's going to be a generational talent, you get the wow moments quite early on. There might not be that many of them, but they happen. Hamilton was an exception. He was very well prepared, and he is Lewis Hamilton, but at the same time, the bar he had to meet was also about as high as you could possibly want to meet in
and
Fernando
Alonso. And he was about 3-4 years older?
Yeah, and he was older, but the point is, that's why you said it was an exceptional season, and that's why it was. There were so many factors involved in that whole championship. We don't need to get bogged down in it now. But, Russell in the Williams, front row at Spa, Alonso in the Minardi, 4 seconds a lap faster than his teammate, qualifying it 5 places higher than it should have been. Verstappen coming in, take the first practice in Suzuka in 2014 like he's been doing it all his life, and on with these absolutely world-class top caliber drivers. You see it straight away, on and off. And so far from Antonelli, there's only been one on, and the rest of it's just been a bit
Yeah.
So I think we're still waiting to make a final judgment.
I agree with what everything you just said, Andrew. You say obviously the likes of Hamilton were older when they first started, but I would actually argue less prepared than somebody like Kimi Antonelli is in this current day and age, where drivers are getting younger by the year.
Actually, on that one, Hamilton was extremely well prepared because he'd done more junior categories than Antonelli. He was older and he'd done 5,000 kilometres of testing in the winter. Antonelli, on the other hand, had done a whole load of TPC, that's like previous car, testing. But he hadn't had the experience in the junior categories that Hamilton had, and as Beck says, he's a little bit younger. So
he skipped F3, didn't he?
I think Beck's right. He definitely needs more time, but even with that proviso, I was expecting to see a little bit more flashes of genius than I have done so far.
Jen, I know you've got some thoughts on this. What do you make of it?
Well, I agree with everything everyone said, but I'm still curious as to the reaction Max Verstappen had last time out, as Kimi Antonelli shoved into the back of him, ruined his race in lap 1, turn 3 of lap 1. And I was expecting Max to blow up, even just a little bit. But he didn't at all. I wonder if you guys are as surprised as I am, thinking back to that. It's out of character for Max to just go, yeah, that's fine, on we go.
Jenny, I think it's because he doesn't think he's got that much to lose this year. I think he recognises he believes he's not got a chance at the championship. So if he misses out on a race where he was going to finish 3rd or 4th, so what really? You know, why beat the kid up when he's just made a mistake, sort of thing. I think that's what it was about. I think if he was in a title fight with a McLaren driver, you'd have seen a very different reaction.
And the fact that in terms of penalty points, Max Verstappen got through unscathed because he's now been docked 2, so he's back down to 9 points.
I mean, that's another thing. He's on his best behaviour at the moment because of the penalty point situations. He's just basically saying nothing at all to anybody, unless he's behind.
If you've got nothing nice to say.
9 is still a lot of points. Bearing in mind, 12,
better than 11, though, isn't it?
It's better than 11, but it's still 9, and 12 was what gets you the race ban, and he's been known to get 3 handed out. You know, with his driving style.
And now that we have these the penalty guidelines being issued to us, we seeing what the options are available. There are some rather, I think actually Lance Stroll said, some rather innocuous discretions that can result in 2 to 3 place penalties, which I thought was quite well worded from Lance Stroll. Indeed, down the penalty order list, Lawson is the next best at 6, so even that is quite a gap. And then Oscar Piastri's got 4, quite a few with 4. 7 drivers have 0 points at the moment. Russell's got 1 point, which he'll lose in December of this year. Right into the last quarter or so of free practice 2, 13 minutes and 7 seconds remaining. We've had some soft tyre runs. Lando Norris going quickest, 2/10 clear of Charles Leclerc. Then comes Lewis Hamilton to the Ferraris, looking quick in these early stages. Piastri a little behind so far, 4/10 back from his teammate. Then comes Max Verstappen, who's actually put in a better run since we last spoke about his soft tyre. Now in 5th, 4/10 back. He's ahead of Kimi Antonelli. Stroll's lap time still up there though, in 7th. Aston Martin running upgrades, ahead of Russell. The 2 Racing Bulls in FP1 and once again in free practice 2, running inside the top 10, looking for some more points finishes for them as they try and hone in on Williams in the Constructors' Championship. They're about 19 points adrift of Williams, who have failed to score. Have only picked up 1 point in the last few races. Albon is just on the fringes of the top 10 in 11th. Then comes Alonso, Bortoleto, Ocon and Yuki Tsunoda, the top 15. Then it's Carlos Sainz, Nico Hülkenberg, Pierre Gasly, Ollie Behrman and Franco Colapinto down in 20th and last. So the likes of the possibly the Haas of Ocon and the 2 Alpines, certain, very much struggling. There have been some upgrades brought by the likes, as I mentioned, of Aston Martin. A lot of floor upgrades. As you were saying, Beck, in FP1, it's quite quick to bring an upgrade here because we're not too far away from any of the team factories. McLaren bringing bits, Red Bull, Aston Martin, Haas, Williams and Sauber, with Aston Martin, I think, being the closest to the track, literally on the campus of Silverstone. I think from the actual circuit it's about 2 miles, but it is literally opposite the main gate to the entrance. Apparently, if you measure it out from sort of the inner part of the circuit to the entrance of Aston Martin.
Quite literally opposite the main entrance of the circuit.
Yeah, but it is quite a... If you're walking it, it's quite a walk.
What? No, it's not.
Well, from the centre of the track, from here, where we are right now.
Why are you measuring it from the centre of the track?
Because this is where the racing action happens.
Yeah, but if you do it from where the track is, the other side, where the main entrance is. Well, that's my measurements go from here.
Well, my measurements go from here. Because this is where the racing action happens. Yeah, but if you do it from where the track is the other side, where the main entrance is. Well, that's my measurements go from here. Because this is where the racing action happens. Well, that's my measurements go from here.
All right, Ordnance Survey.
Thank you very much. When you've got your one done, we can read that one out.
Okay, sure.
But I think they are the closest. Red Bull down in Milton Keynes.
Is this another one like the distance from Sydney to Melbourne?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Just southwest, a couple of Aston Martin, Red Bull, Milton Keynes, Mercedes obviously in Brackley, Haas down in Banbury, and Alpine in Enstone. So Motorsport Valley very much making this part of the world the home of motorsport. Indeed, Sauber wanting to get in on the action as well. They've just launched a UK engineering hub here too, while they main HQ is in Hinwil in Switzerland, and once Audi come in, is it Neuburg where their engine facility is based? So they're operating out of those two factories for when they come in, but wanting to very much get in on the workforce that is here.
Cadillac will have a base in Silverstone.
They will. Well, even
they already do. In fact,
Yep.
Formula One was even they were at Downing Street, weren't they? In the build-up to this weekend,
meeting the Prime Minister. Yeah, Stefano Domenicali, the chairman of Formula One, was there with a couple of the team principals and drivers and some media. They had a McLaren car parked out in front, doing all the schmoozing and promoting F1 within the importance of it here, as we've talked about. They reckon, F1 this is, they provided the numbers, that Formula One is worth £12 billion to the UK economy, which is sizable. So yes, it's a very important industry, and it's responsible for a lot of jobs in this country.
I think I read a article. I think it was an article from the race. The motorsport industry employs 6,000 people with 41,000 jobs linked to Formula One, and as you say, a total of 12 billion contributes to the UK economy. It certainly is big business, Formula One in the UK. And you know what, I keep referring back to Miami, because I think that was the last time you were with us, Beck.
I was, yeah.
We were talking about how big the event was, and I know it's different here, but the build-up, at least in recent times, maybe it's just because I've been invited to some more events this year, but
you've been busy.
I've been busy, but in London, I was in London on Wednesday, and Formula One fans everywhere. McLaren took over Trafalgar Square. Williams were in Piccadilly. You had a Ferrari event. Racing Bulls were doing something the night before in Soho. There was everywhere you looked, there was a different coloured T-shirt, and it was incredible. It was being taken over by Formula One, and it reminded me, especially the McLaren Trafalgar Square event. I don't know if you remember, I think it was 2017, a few years ago, F1 did like an event there where they had some of the cars actually drive.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
I think it was all the teams, but it was kind of just as Liberty were taking over, so it was a good event. But this, on Wednesday, for one team, was busier than that event from over a decade ago. Just shows how big it's been.
I think there was an event in maybe it's the same event, but they basically had a massive stage and we were all invited, and it was really good. It was a really amazing event, and I thought they would do it again. And actually, I remember the only driver who didn't turn up was Lewis Hamilton, and it turned out that he was in Greece on holiday. So yeah, that went down well with the media, as you can imagine. But I can't remember the excuse he came up with now off the top of my head. But that was fantastic, and it was a real show from Liberty of what they wanted to achieve with Formula One, with making every race Super Bowl. And then they didn't do it again. And that was a real shame. So actually, I was really pleased to see what McLaren did in Trafalgar Square, because quite frankly, that's what they should be doing. We all know Formula One want a race in London. We all know that's not going to happen anytime soon. And so actually, it's really good for them to take over the capital in the way that they did. But also, it was really embraced. It was packed. People were everywhere. It wasn't like people suddenly got annoyed that they closed the roads down. I'm sure people did. But it was a really good event.
Activations.
That's
the buzzword, isn't it? We love an activation. We love it. I mean, Jenny, it's certainly... Formula One has taken over almost the London and the UK in the last month, because of course we had the film premiere, the European film premiere of F1 the movie the week before in Leicester Square.
I mean, quite frankly, at the moment it feels like F1 has taken over the world. So big is the hype that F1 is creating. You've got the film launching in the US and then here. It's just been crazy. And then the success of Drive to Survive. And I remember that event, Activation in London. And it was just as Drive to Survive was starting. As you say, Liberty had just come in and we're starting to make things happen. And the popularity of this sport, fans have just flocked to it for all sorts of different reasons. And I love the fact that you talk to a grandstand full of fans and they all have their own particular reason why they came and how they found this wonderful sport. And they're not all exactly alike. And we just need to embrace them all. The ones who are historic and have legacy, the ones that are new and just want to be here for the buzz of it. All of them, welcome.
Absolutely. Welcome. Hashtag BBC F1 if you're new. Always welcome. Welcome in. Coming back to our Antonelli chat as we get into the last 5 or so minutes of this session, as the Williams of Carlos Sainz just running out wide, bringing up a bit of gravel on the exit of Luffield. The Williams drivers, actually, I think Carlos Sainz is putting them, he's done 21 laps so far, and Alex Albon's done 24. I think that's the most combined of the two teams. A few reliability issues of late. Williams really trying to make sure they get all the data they can. On hashtag BBC F1, Nulla has said, I'm actually more impressed with Isaac Hadjar than Antonelli so far.
I was going to ask this question. Are there any rookies on the grid that you've actually been impressed with, Benny?
He's busy.
Oh, he's busy getting ready for the best bit of the practice. But I would have said Hadjar as well. I completely agree with him.
Hadjar.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, it's a really strong
run. But not
run.
generational talent.
No, but I think are we putting it into perspective? Is there a perspective here?
You're the one who said that you know pretty early on. He's halfway through his first season. And
then if you want me to commit, no, not generational.
Yes, I do want you to commit, Benny.
Is there a perspective here, though, that we're also looking back, remembering that first race in Australia and how awful it was for him?
No, I think it was awful for every rookie, wasn't it? I think
he didn't even make the start.
Yeah. And the rest of them didn't even finish. So,
well, Antonelli did.
Well, Antonelli's the only one who finished, wasn't he? Yeah, no, dude, it just wasn't a great race all around. But I tell you what is great, and I'll tell you why Benny wasn't talking to me earlier, because now, ready for the best part of the session, we have Benny's Bear Corner.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
You can go the distance, we'll find out.
Just to be clear, everyone, there have been many reasons over the last 24 hours or so for me to not talk to Bet Clancy, but we'll save those for another time. On the on-track action, it's actually some really interesting data. The Ferraris obviously look quick on one lap, but Charles Leclerc is also the fastest over a long run. He's averaging 1 minute 31.898 in the Ferrari, and that's quicker than Max Verstappen, who's second, followed by Norris, Hamilton and Piastri in that order. So for all Max Verstappen's complaints about understeer and what have you in high-speed corners, the Red Bull looks genuinely competitive, as you might expect it to around a track with so many high-speed corners as Silverstone. But I think it's the Ferraris that are the real surprise. I think it's probably surprised them because they were nowhere in Austria. They've basically been pretty much nowhere compared to the very front of the field all year, apart from that one sprint race in China. But today, at least, we don't know the engine modes and so on, so there's obviously a few provisos, but these race runs normally provide the most accurate picture at the end of Friday, and Leclerc is the fastest guy on track.
Was Austria not quite positive for Ferrari with a new floor and a podium and a fourth place finish?
Relatively positive, but they were still 20 seconds off the leaders at the end of the race, and the driver was still a bit downbeat after it. So, I mean, this is only Friday practice, but this is, to be fastest by quite a margin. It's a tenth and a half on average for Leclerc. That's very encouraging for them.
It will bring a smile to the Ferrari driver faces come the end of this session in just a couple of minutes' time. So positive then for Ferrari. Max Verstappen better than perhaps he's sounding over the team radio. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda has just run deep down at Village and had to rejoin the track. Tsunoda struggling down in 15th spot, so Verstappen is half a second off Norris, and then Tsunoda is another 0.6 of a second back from his teammate Max Verstappen, which is there or thereabouts he has been on average. Languishing at the back as well, the two Alpines struggling, Gasly and Colapinto down there. Ollie Behrman, we heard he was complaining of quite a lot of understeer a little earlier in this practice session. New upgrades for the Haas team as they try and get to the bottom of those. And up inside, though, continually being impressed by those Racing Bulls, Hajar and Lawson rounding out the top 10 at the moment, but looking fairly tight, actually, just between, well, that midfield always so tight. I think, are we going to lose this next year, Beck, do you think? The field separation being almost absolutely nothing. In Austria, one of the smallest circuits on the calendar, less than a second at parts, covering the top 20.
Yes, sadly, by the laws of physics, the field will distribute again, because when you have steady regulations for a number of years, by the very nature, the teams learn, develop, steal probably is not the right word, are influenced by their rivals, and so the field naturally comes together, which is why we're seeing what we're seeing. These regulations have been in place for a good few years now, and next year is, Christian Horner actually earlier said that it was the biggest regulation change in F1 in 50 years, because it's not just an engine change, it's the full shebang is happening here. So the teams are looking at everything, and this is why Andy Cowell, the team principal at Aston Martin, was saying they have 99% of their work now is on 2026, because it is so important to get that right. So yes, sadly, we may not see such a competitive 2026, certainly as we're seeing now. The hope, obviously, is that it will again bunch up, and hopefully they stop playing around with the regulations so much.
Well, we talked about this before, haven't we? But I suppose the idea is that this is in place, and this happens every few years, every 5 or so years, to continually develop Formula One, but also to slow the cars down to make sure everything's still safe. So is it a necessary evil sometimes?
Well, so a lot of the regulation changes that are coming in for next year are actually about sustainability. So, for example, we've got Audi coming in, and they were at the table while the regulations were being discussed, because sustainability is obviously absolutely key for car makers. So Audi want to come in with the fuels that are coming in and the engines, and they transfer that back into their cars that they sell out for Joe Bloggs to use on the road. That's actually really important, and it genuinely, outside of F1, it is actually a very important thing that's happening in that development. So there is that side of it, but once we've done that, do we always need to keep tweaking? The recent ones that we've had is to create closer racing, and then we were changing basically how they get downforce. That's changing again, but that changed before so that they could race each other, because the outwash that they get basically means the car behind can't get close enough because of the dirty air, and they can't get through, so you can't overtake. The delta that's required to overtake a car is, just that speed differential between the teams doesn't exist. So then they've introduced tweaks, I would say. But you'd hope we'd get to a position where we don't need it so much. The problem is we have some of the smartest people in the world watching in this sport, and they always find ways to read the regulations in different ways, and then we get a dominant team, and then it is necessary for the regulations to change to try and pull them back in, as we saw happen with Mercedes, to obviously great effect, with Red Bull then having their couple of years of dominance. So I can wish for the regulations to stay the same. I know that won't happen, but it also shouldn't happen. There should be tweaks, but it does always lead to that moment, the months leading up to it, of wondering what actually is going to happen and how competitive it is going to be.
Well, we still have half a season of this year's regulations to enjoy. That's the end of FP2. Lando Norris has taken the checker flag, fastest for McLaren, 2/10 clear of Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton in third, Oscar Piastri fourth, with Max Verstappen rounding out the top 5. Kimi Antonelli sixth ahead of Lance Stroll. George Russell 8th ahead of the 2 Racing Bulls. Hajar, then Lawson in 10th. Albon was 11th ahead of Fernando Alonso. Gabriel Bortoleto 13th. Then comes Esteban Ocon and Yuki Tsunoda. Carlos Sainz 16th ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Pierre Gasly was 18th ahead of Oliver Behrman, and Franco Colapinto 20th and last. The field covered by 1.4 seconds.
Yeah, I think we've got to maximize quali, but the setup for the race is pretty good.
Okay.
That was Charles Leclerc confirming that they feel comfortable for the race. Charles Leclerc, based on our long-run data crunching, fastest in race trim, and not looking too shabby ahead of qualifying tomorrow either. Beck, what's going to happen for the rest of the weekend. You're leaving us after today, aren't you?
I know, you're
So-
replacing me with Damon Hill. Not too shabby, 96 world champion. I
Look.
don't feel too bad about it.
Look, when he is, you're keeping his seat warm.
I know.
today.
Well, Benny's not talking to me anymore, apparently, so it's time for me to move on.
So you can give us then your predictions for the rest of the weekend. Pole, win, how's it all going to unfold?
Lando win, Lewis second, Russell third.
Wow, okay. And who's on pole? Sorry.
Lando.
Lando. Wow. Okay. We'll take it. We'll take that. We'll take it and run.
I'm not talking to you. I said there were plenty of reasons to not talk to you.
Oh, I need to buy you a beer, Benny, do I?
Yes, exactly. But you're not staying tonight, are you?
No, I'm not, no.
That's a shame. I think I'm going to go for Norris, but I've got an eye on those Ferraris.
Yeah, it seems encouraging, doesn't it, from Ferrari today. Let's see how the weather unfolds as well. The wind can play a factor too, but that is Friday's running. Done and dusted. It was Lewis Hamilton who topped FP1. Lando Norris tops FP2. McLaren looking quick. Ferrari strong as well. You can join us for free practice 3 tomorrow on 5 Sports Extra 3 from 25 past 11. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.